The auditorium buzzed with soft murmurs and shuffling programs. Families filled the rows in their Sunday best, eager eyes scanning the stage for the moment their child's name would echo from the podium. Outside, the early summer sun poured through the tall windows, casting golden lines across the polished wood floor. Row F, seat 7, creaked as Elijah B. Carter took his place. He was early, always was. Dressed in a charcoal gray suit, freshly pressed, with a navy tie and silver cufflinks, he eased down slowly. His gait bore the burden of time, years that had taught patience, humility, and how to carry weight without making noise. He removed his Panama hat and placed it carefully on his lap, then adjusted his glasses. His face was lined, proud, and calm. A face that had seen too much and said too little. He barely noticed the woman already seated next to him until her body tensed. She was mid-40s, blonde, lips thin and tight. Her floral scarf was knotted perfectly at the neck. She turned ever so slightly away from him as he sat, and then, quietly but unmistakably, she clutched her purse, pulled it into her lap with a single quick motion. Elijah noticed. He always noticed, but he didn't flinch. He simply gave a small nod, his voice gentle. "Good morning." She gave him a half glance and a tight smile. Her fingers stayed firm on the purse strap. Her eyes shifted forward again, focused on the empty stage. He turned his attention there too. The same silence between them, now heavier. Around them, conversations bloomed, laughter, clapping. A child's voice asking when it would start. A man behind them joked about tuition bills and empty nests, but row F remained quiet. After a long pause, the woman spoke again, soft but pointed. "Are you here for a student?" Elijah turned toward her slightly. "Yes, ma'am. A young man named Miles Watson. You might know him. Honor roll, mathlete, jazz band, real sharp kid." She raised her brows. "Oh, I've heard the name. My son, Jordan, mentioned him." Elijah gave a warm nod. "They sit next to each other in AP Literature. Good friends." "Ah." She looked at him again, trying to place him. "Are you faculty?" Elijah smiled lightly. "No, ma'am, not faculty." She hesitated. "Then, may I ask your connection to Miles?" Elijah leaned back slightly, folding his hands over his hat. "I'm his mentor, his coach. And some days, maybe the closest thing he's got to a father." Her lips parted slightly. "Oh, I didn't know." "No reason you would." She looked back to the stage, and for a moment, her hands loosened on her purse. But then she cleared her throat and shifted again, posture stiff. "I just didn't expect someone like—" She trailed off. Elijah didn't press. He just sat quietly. From across the aisle, a black woman in a yellow dress leaned over and beamed. "Elijah Carter. Lord, I thought that was you, looking sharp as ever." Elijah stood gently and hugged her, his voice warm. "Miss Brenda, you're still glowing. Your boy walking today?" "He sure is. Third in the class. We made it." He chuckled. "I told you he would." They exchanged a few more words, memories, blessings, laughter. Then he sat back down. The woman beside him stared ahead. "You're well known here," she said, almost flat. Elijah shrugged. "I've been around a while." Then the lights dimmed. The band began to play. A hush fell. The principal stepped to the podium and began the opening remarks. Cheers erupted as names were called. Students crossing the stage in slow procession. Tassels swinging. Proud eyes scanning the crowd. Jordan's name was called. The woman beside Elijah straightened proudly, clapping fast and bright. Jordan looked their way and gave a smile and a nod. Then came Miles Watson. Elijah stood, His hands clapped in steady rhythm, eyes shining. Across the crowd, Miles found him instantly. That smile, the kind that held trust, memory, and unspoken gratitude, flashed briefly before Miles stepped down. The moment passed, but the story was just beginning. Then the principal returned to the microphone. "We have a special closing today," she announced. "This year's keynote speaker is not a politician, not a celebrity, but someone who has quietly shaped dozens of the young men and women graduating today." Elijah didn't move, but the woman next to him glanced sideways, confused. The principal continued. "A former educator, a local hero, and to many of our students, a guiding light. Please welcome Mr. Elijah B. Carter." The woman blinked, frozen. Elijah rose. He picked up his hat, nodded once to her without bitterness, and stepped into the aisle. The applause swelled as he climbed the steps to the stage, steady and sure. And as the lights hit his face and the microphone buzzed to life, the woman in row F sat in silence. Her son watched from the crowd below, eyes wide, as the man she'd dismissed prepared to speak words that would stay with him forever. Elijah gripped the edges of the podium gently. He looked out over the sea of young faces, brown, black, white, all mixed like the world they'd inherited. And then he began. "I wasn't supposed to be here today," he said, voice calm and deep. "Not in this building, not on this stage, not in a suit, and definitely not giving a speech." A few students laughed. Some nodded. "But I am, and there's a reason for that." He paused. His eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on one face in particular. Then he said something that made one mother in row F sit forward, purse forgotten. Because what he said next wasn't about policy, or success, or degrees. It was about a bus ride, a teenage boy, and the day someone decided to believe in him when no one else would. But before he could finish, before the full story could unfold, Elijah looked up at the clock and smiled. "Time's short," he said, "and there's something y'all need to hear. Something I never told even Miles." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an old photograph. The crowd leaned in. Elijah Carter held the photo in his hand like it was made of glass. It was old, creased in the corners, yellowing at the edges, but the image still spoke clear as a bell. Two boys, maybe 14 or 15, sat on the back steps of a brick building. One was white, tall, grinning like he just got away with something. The other, a lanky black kid with scraped knees, had a trumpet across his lap and a wary smile on his face. Elijah held it up for a moment, then lowered it gently onto the podium. "That's me," he said, tapping the black boy with a finger. "And that fool beside me, well, that was Nathaniel, my first friend. Real friend." The room quieted again. Elijah took a breath. "We were part of the first class to integrate Willard High back in 1965. First day, the school let us know we weren't welcome, not in words, but in how they looked at us, stepped around us, didn't learn our names." He paused. "But Nate? Nate sat next to me in band. He passed me a trumpet and said, 'Man, I don't know a damn thing about music, but let's be bad together.' We were bad, awful even. But we were friends." The students chuckled. Elijah smiled faintly. "Until one day, he stopped showing up." He leaned in slightly. His father caught wind that he'd been sitting with that colored boy. That's what they called me. Beat him bad. Pulled him from band. Made him switch schools. The silence thickened. Even the principal's eyes shimmered faintly behind her glasses. "I never saw Nate again, but I kept the photo, because it reminded me that even when the world said we didn't belong, some of us tried anyway." He looked across the auditorium now, not just at the students, but the parents too. I tell you this not to depress you, but to prepare you, because the world still whispers to our children, "You're not enough. You don't belong. You're dangerous." Or worse, forgettable. His voice dropped lower, steadier. I've mentored 28 young men and women over the past 15 years. Bright, brilliant minds. But every single one of them, every single one, has faced a moment when someone made them feel smaller, just for walking into the room. He looked directly at a boy in the fourth row, a tall, dark-skinned teen with tired eyes and polished shoes. You know what I mean. The boy nodded, slow. But here's the truth. When you walk in with your head high. Because this world may not always open the door. But sometimes, just sometimes, you kick the damn thing open and make room. Applause broke through the tension. Elijah paused and gave a slow nod. "And now," he said, "I want to tell you why this matters to one person in this room." He turned slightly, glancing back at row F. His voice softened. "There's a young man here today named Jordan. Y'all saw him walk across that stage, tall and proud. You don't know what it took for him to get here, but I do." In her seat, the woman with the floral scarf froze. Her son's name had just filled the room, not with celebration, but with gravity. Elijah continued. "When Miles brought Jordan to one of our Saturday workshops, he wouldn't even speak. Just sat in the back, hoodie up, arms crossed. Didn't trust nobody. Wouldn't make eye contact. But Miles said, 'He's smart. He just needs someone to notice.'" The woman blinked. "I gave Jordan a math problem. Real tough one. Said, 'If you get this right, I'll buy your lunch.' He stared at it for 10 minutes, then said, 'This is wrong.'" The crowd chuckled. Turns out, he was right. I'd made a mistake. First time anyone had caught it in all my years of mentoring. And Jordan didn't gloat. Just said, "I figured you'd want to know." That day, he earned my respect. And a double cheeseburger. Laughter broke the tension again. "But respect ain't the same as belief," Elijah said, holding the silence. It took weeks, months, for him to open up, to believe his voice mattered, that he mattered. And one day, he told me why he kept that hoodie up, why he flinched when someone touched his backpack, why he stopped raising his hand in class, even when he knew the answer. He looked straight out again, his tone sharpening like a knife through silk. Because too many people had already decided who he was. Before he even spoke. The woman in row F swallowed hard. Elijah's words hung in the air now. Not a story anymore, but a reckoning. Today, Jordan is headed to Morehouse College on a full scholarship. And if he makes it, and I believe he will, it won't just be because he's brilliant. It'll be because someone finally saw the light in him and didn't flinch. He looked out across the students again. I say all this not for pity or applause. I say it because someone in this room clutched their purse when I sat down. The room went still. I'm not angry, not embarrassed. I've seen that gesture more times than I can count. Sometimes in elevators, sometimes on sidewalks, once in a church. He turned toward row F, his tone not bitter, but firm. But to the woman who did it, I hope you see now, the danger you thought I represented wasn't real. The threat, it never existed. I was just an old man in a suit, a mentor, a speaker, and maybe, just maybe, someone your son will never forget. The auditorium remained frozen. Then someone began to clap. One student, then another, then the row, then the room. The applause roared, not out of obligation, but because something in them cracked open. Elijah stepped back from the podium. He took a long breath, then gave a humble nod and turned. But as he reached the steps, a voice called out from the crowd. "Mr. Carter!" He turned. Jordan stood, his eyes glassy, voice loud enough to carry. "Would you be willing to say a few words at our orientation this fall?" The room turned toward the boy. Elijah smiled deeply now. "I'd be honored." But just as he stepped down, a tap came on his shoulder. It was the woman from row F. Her hand trembled slightly. I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't know." Elijah gave a small nod. "You didn't have to know. Just had to see." She opened her mouth, but the principal called his name again. "Mr. Carter, can you stay for a few photos?" He looked back once more, at Jordan, at Miles, at the mothers who clapped, the fathers who nodded, the students who leaned in. Then he turned and followed the principal down the hallway toward the photography room. But what waited there wasn't just a photo. It was a face from the past, one he hadn't seen in decades, one he thought he'd never see again. Elijah followed the principal down the back corridor of the auditorium, his footsteps soft against the linoleum tiles. The buzz of the crowd still echoed behind them, but here the world felt quieter, like it was holding its breath. The photo room was set up just past the faculty lounge. A white backdrop hung from a portable frame, and a school photographer with a lanyard and a nervous smile adjusted his lens as Elijah stepped in. "Mr. Carter," the principal said warmly, "if you could just stand here. Yes, right there. We'd love a photo for the school archive and the local paper." Elijah nodded and adjusted his cuffs. "Sure thing." He posed, once with the principal, once with the top students, and then alone. Each click of the shutter echoed like a heartbeat. "Last one," the photographer said. "Could you smile just a bit?" Elijah gave a half smile, measured, warm, but tempered by a weight most people didn't carry. The shutter snapped once more. As the principal turned to thank him again, a quiet knock came at the door. "Come in," she called, half expecting a staff member. But when the door opened, Elijah froze. There, standing in the doorway, was a man maybe 2 years younger than him. Tall, pale, thin silver hair swept back. He wore a suit, plain, outdated, but his eyes, they hadn't changed. The man blinked, unsure. "Elijah?" Elijah blinked slowly. "Nate." Nathaniel Brooks stepped into the room as if unsure the floor would hold him. "I wasn't sure," Nate said, voice shaking. "Not until I saw the photo they just took." Elijah stepped back, just once. "Been over 50 years. 57, Nate said, almost to himself. I counted. For a moment, silence settled like dust. Then Elijah spoke. "I thought you disappeared." "I did," Nate replied, lowering his eyes. "My father made sure of it." Elijah gave a single, tired nod. "You said once you wanted to play jazz in New York," he said. "Guess that didn't happen." "No," Nate said. "Didn't play much after that. Didn't feel like I had the right to." He stepped closer. "I've followed your work, though. I saw your name in the papers, community outreach, mentoring, the youth program. I always wanted to write. I just didn't know if you'd want to hear from me." Elijah studied the man before him. "I kept the photo," he said softly. Nate's lips parted, eyes glassy. "So did I," he whispered. The principal, sensing the moment wasn't hers to witness, stepped out quietly. Now it was just the two of them. Elijah walked to the table, pulled out a folding chair and sat slowly. Nate didn't move at first, just stood there like a boy waiting to be scolded. "You remember what you said to me the last day of band?" Elijah asked. Nate hesitated. "Not exactly. You said, 'We'll figure it out.' Then you vanished." Nate lowered himself into a chair across from him. My father sent me to live with my uncle in Indiana that night. Didn't let me pack. Didn't let me say goodbye. And he swallowed hard. I never had the guts to find you. Elijah looked down at his hands. I hated you for a while, he said. Nate nodded. I hated myself longer. Then Elijah looked up, eyes searching. But you're here now. Nate's voice cracked. I didn't know what I'd find. I just came for the graduation. My grandson's in the class. Elijah blinked. Your grandson? Yeah, Nate said. Name's Jordan. The room stopped spinning. Elijah leaned back slowly, eyes wide, breath caught. Jordan Brooks. Nate nodded. Elijah let out a long, slow breath. He chuckled once, but it wasn't amusement. It was disbelief stitched with fate. Your grandson is Jordan, he repeated. Nate straightened, concerned. Why? Did something happen? Elijah looked at him like he'd just seen a ghost. I've been mentoring that boy for the past 2 years. Nate's lips parted. I didn't know. My daughter and I don't talk much. She moved here after the divorce. Said the school was good. I had no idea you were part of his life. Elijah gave a quiet laugh, more exhale than sound. Ironic, he said. Life kept us apart, only to have our grandsons sit side by side in English class. Nate smiled now, awkward, hopeful. Does he ever talk about me? Elijah nodded slowly. Said he didn't know his grandfather well, that there were gaps. Nate lowered his eyes. I always thought, he whispered, if I ever saw you again, I'd ask one thing, if I could make it right. Elijah was quiet for a long beat. Then he said, You can. Nate looked up. Start by showing up. Keep showing up. That boy's already carrying more than you think. Be the person your father never let you be. The words hung heavy in the air. I'm proud of him, Nate said. I just didn't know how to say it without feeling like a fraud. Elijah stood now, walking to the window. The afternoon light spilled in, soft and golden. Outside, families hugged. Graduates posed in caps and gowns. Life, still moving. He turned back. Then don't try to be perfect, he said. Just be present. Nate stood too. He extended his hand. Would it be all right if I came by one of your Saturday sessions? Sat in the back? Listened? Elijah looked at the hand for a long time. Then he took it. Yeah, he said. That'd be all right. Their hands stayed clasped longer than needed. Not out of obligation, but to bridge 5 decades of silence. Then, from the hallway, a voice called, Grandpa? Nate turned. Jordan stood there, cap in hand, confusion on his face. What are you doing in here? Nate turned back toward Elijah, unsure. But Elijah just smiled and motioned to the boy. Come on in, Jordan. Let's have a little talk. Jordan stepped inside slowly, eyes moving between them. And just like that, 3 generations stood in a room thick with history. A mentor, a lost friend, and the bridge between them. But what none of them knew, what none of them could have expected, was that outside that same building, a headline was already going viral. Not about the ceremony, not about the graduates, but about one old man, one simple speech, and the lesson that changed everything. The door closed with a soft click as Jordan stepped into the photo room. He looked from Nate to Elijah, confusion tightening his brow. What's going on? Nate opened his mouth, but the words tangled. Elijah stepped in gently. Jordan, he said, voice even. You remember how you once told me there were pieces missing? Gaps in your story? Jordan nodded, guarded. Well, Elijah continued, this man here might be one of them. Nate stepped forward. His hands trembled slightly. but he kept his eyes on the boy in front of him. "I'm your grandfather," he said. "Nathaniel Brooks." Jordan blinked. For a moment, no one moved. Then Jordan looked at Elijah, as if searching for a signal, a tell. But Elijah simply gave a small nod, his eyes steady. "I don't understand," Jordan said. "You've never been around." Nate nodded slowly. "That's true, and it's something I've carried for a long time. I made mistakes, too many of them, but I've been watching from afar. And when I realized Elijah was mentoring you—" He trailed off. The truth weighed heavier than apology. Jordan folded his arms, his shoulders rigid. "So now you just show up, today?" "I didn't come for this," Nate said. "I came to see you walk across that stage. I didn't even know Elijah would be here. But maybe it's time I stopped staying in the shadows." Jordan didn't speak. He looked away, jaw tight. Elijah stepped forward. "Jordan," he said gently, "your anger's valid. Don't bury it, but don't let it be the whole story either." Jordan's breath caught. He didn't want to cry, not here, not in front of two men who knew more about his blood than he did. "I used to wonder what kind of man would leave his family," he whispered. Nate looked down. "And I used to wonder," Jordan continued, "if maybe there was something wrong with me, something that made people disappear." That hit harder than any accusation. Nate took a careful step forward. "There was never anything wrong with you. The fault, every bit of it, was mine." The silence between them now wasn't just uncomfortable. It was sacred, like the space between words that matter more than the sentences. Then Jordan did something unexpected. He pulled the tassel off his cap and handed it to Nate. "You missed the walk," he said. "But you can hold this." Nate blinked, stunned. His fingers closed gently over the tassel. It wasn't forgiveness, not fully, but it was a door opening, however slightly. Elijah watched them quietly. There was something full circle about this. A boy once separated from his best friend by fear and violence, now standing with that friend's grandson, trying to make things right. But the world outside didn't wait for emotional resolution. A loud knock came at the door. It was the assistant principal. "Mr. Carter, you have visitors in the main lobby." "Visitors?" he asked, puzzled. She nodded. "You're trending." "Trending what?" "Online. That speech. Someone filmed it. It's already been picked up by a local news outlet and one of those viral quote pages. Over 300,000 views in 2 hours. Elijah raised an eyebrow. "That many people got nothing better to do?" he muttered. The assistant principal laughed. "You touched a nerve, sir, in the best way." Elijah turned back to Nate and Jordan. "You two good for a minute?" Jordan nodded. "Go ahead." Nate gave a soft smile. "We'll talk." Elijah stepped out and walked down the hallway, his shoes tapping gently against the tiles. The school felt different now, like it had absorbed the weight of what had been spoken and was carrying it forward. In the main lobby, he was greeted by a crowd. Not reporters, not politicians, parents, students, staff, even the janitor who used to give him a nod every other Saturday. They clapped when they saw him. Not the wild kind of applause, not the kind you give a celebrity. The kind you give someone who said what needed saying. A mother approached, a young boy clinging to her side. "Mr. Carter," she said, voice shaky, "I just want to say thank you. My son, he saw your speech and said, 'Mama, that man made me feel like I matter.'" Elijah bent down to the boy's eye level. "You do matter. Don't let the world tell you different." The boy beamed. Another student walked up, a girl in a hijab, tall and quiet. "Sir," she said softly, You reminded me that my silence isn't weakness. I needed that. He gave her a slight bow. You carry more strength in your silence than most do in their noise. The principal came up beside him. We'd like to formally invite you to speak at next year's graduation, and, if you're willing, to start a youth leadership series with our juniors. Elijah rubbed his jaw. I'm not used to all this attention. Good, she smiled. Means you won't abuse it. He chuckled. Then a voice came from the lobby doors. Mr. Carter, it was the woman from row F. She approached slowly, this time without the scarf, her face bare and eyes sincere. I wasn't sure you'd want to talk. He watched her carefully. I clutched my purse because I was afraid, she said. Not of you, but of what I've been taught to see. She paused. And I think today broke something open in me, something that needed breaking. Elijah didn't say anything at first. Then, sometimes, he said, when something breaks, it makes space for something better. She nodded, eyes wet. Thank you, for your grace. He nodded. Keep growing. That's all any of us can do. She turned and walked away, slowly, quietly. This time, she didn't look back. Elijah looked around the room one last time before heading back down the hallway. In the photo room, Jordan and Nate now sat side by side. No laughter, no tears, just quiet talking, like two people building a bridge plank by plank. As Elijah stepped back into the room, Nate stood. I was thinking, he said, maybe we take that photo again, the one from the steps, this time with all three of us. Jordan looked between them, then nodded slowly. They walked outside into the late afternoon light. The building behind them cast long shadows, but the sky was clear. They found a spot on the front steps. Jordan sat in the middle. Elijah on one side, Nate on the other. A nearby student offered to take the picture. As the shutter clicked, Elijah leaned in close. This ain't the end, he said. It's just the part, right before something new begins. And he was right. Because what none of them knew was that a call was coming. One that would take this quiet story and shine a national spotlight on it. The next morning, Elijah Carter was trimming the rose bush in his front yard when his neighbor, Miss Ruby, came rushing across the street barefoot in her robe. Elijah, she called, waving her phone. You need to sit down for this. He chuckled. Ruby, you know I don't sit down for gossip. This ain't gossip, she huffed. You're on the Today Show's front page. Elijah paused, pruning shears frozen in midair. She tapped her screen and held it out. There it was, a video thumbnail of him at the podium, eyes steady, hand resting over the old photograph. Retired teacher delivers viral graduation speech on race, redemption, and legacy. 2.3 million views, national coverage, trending across 5 platforms. Elijah squinted. Lord help us. The internet found me. They want to interview you, Ruby grinned. And not just them. Some senator's office called the school. Said they want to give you a Presidential Community Impact Award. Live at the Capitol. He rubbed his temple. I barely got my roses pruned, and now they want to fly me to D.C.? But Ruby's voice softened. This ain't just about you, Elijah. People are listening. People are waking up because of what you said. Elijah looked away toward the horizon. The morning sun was still low, casting long shadows across the grass. He'd spent his whole life trying to make a quiet difference, mentoring in basements, speaking in church halls, pushing chairs into circles for boys who thought the world didn't see them. And now, the world was seeing him. He went inside. The messages kept pouring in. My son watched your speech 5 times, said it made him feel less alone. I clutched my purse too once. I'm sorry. I want to do better. Thank you for speaking for the ones who never get the mic. But one message stopped him cold. It came from an unknown sender. No text, just a video. He clicked play. The screen opened on a teenage boy, brown-skinned, nervous, standing in front of a school mural that read, "Legacy is built in silence." Hi, my name's Anthony. I live in Baltimore. I never met my dad. I never had anyone to show me what being a man really means. But I saw your speech, and something in it, something in you, made me believe I don't have to become what they expect. He swallowed. I don't want to be angry anymore. I want to matter. Elijah sat down, hard. His hands trembled. He had known the power of words, sure. But this was something else. This was impact. 2 weeks later, Elijah stood in a tailored navy blue suit under the marble dome of the U.S. Capitol. His speech had made its way into Senate halls, Sunday pulpits, classroom debates, and dinner tables across the country. And now he was here, not to perform, not to prove, but to represent. Jordan stood beside him in his own suit, straighter than Elijah had ever seen him stand. Nate, too, dressed in quiet dignity, clutched a folded copy of the same photograph from 1965, the one that had changed everything. The hall was packed. Lawmakers, veterans, youth leaders, students flown in from schools in Chicago, Oakland, Memphis. All of them gathered to hear the man whose words had started a wave of hard conversations. The MC approached the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "please welcome a man who taught us not only what legacy looks like, but what healing sounds like." Mr. Elijah B. Carter. Thunderous applause rose like a tide. Elijah approached slowly, every step echoing with memory. He stood tall behind the microphone and looked out across the faces, young, old, brown, white, uncertain, proud. "I'm honored," he began, "but I'm not here for applause." He paused. "I'm here because one woman clutched her purse when I sat beside her, and then saw who I really was." A quiet murmur swept through the crowd. "That moment," he continued, "wasn't about her fear. It was about our future. Because what happens in those quiet, unspoken seconds, when a stranger is sized up, judged, dismissed, that's where the real battles are fought." He let the silence sit. "We don't need another statue. We don't need another slogan. What we need is to see each other, to stop deciding who belongs in a room before a word is spoken." He looked at Jordan now. "There's a boy standing here today who once asked me if he was too much to be loved, too angry, too black, too complicated." His voice broke just slightly. "My answer to him is my answer to every young person watching. You are not too much. You are enough, exactly as you are." The room held its breath. This country has a memory problem. We forget the quiet heroes, the janitors, the bus drivers, the mentors, the kids who don't say much but carry everything. He raised the old photograph again. "This was my friend Nate and me. We were 14. They tried to tear us apart, and for a long time, they succeeded." Nate's eyes filled with tears in the front row. "But today, he's here. His grandson's here. And the boy in this photo, that lanky kid with scraped knees and a second-hand trumpet, he finally found his way back." The entire hall was silent now. Elijah finished quietly. "Legacy is not about being remembered. It's about remembering others. It's about seeing the invisible and loving the overlooked. That's the work. That's the calling." He stepped back. The applause was different this time. It wasn't loud. It was long, sustained, steady. The kind of clapping you hear in places where people know they've just witnessed something sacred. That night, Elijah stood on his porch. The Capitol lights were far behind him now. In front of him, fireflies blinked in the grass, and cicadas hummed like an old vinyl record. Jordan came outside, 2 mugs of hot tea in hand. They sat in silence for a while. Then Jordan spoke. "Mr. Carter?" "Yes, son? Do you think people really change?" Elijah looked out toward the stars. "Sometimes," he said, "but more often they wake up. That's enough." Jordan nodded. He leaned back and sipped his tea. And as the night grew quiet, the world kept turning. But something had shifted. Not just in the country. In one boy. In one man. In one woman who once clutched her purse. If this story moved you, share it with someone who still believes people can change. And if you've got an Elijah in your life, let them know today.